Good afternoon, this is Occupy Killing, coming to you live from Burns Hall, where we're going to talk about the Olmsted Center Deconversion. This is disability and the political process. Disability-related issues, voting rights and education will be discussed. Iowa State Senator Rob Reed, who is running for the U.S. Senate, is here. And candidates who want to attend, I think the late start is supposed to start at 4:30, but because of some technical issues trying to get it done, she wanted to communicate with the projector that's starting
Well, I got my
everything's what is now is going to show him what the showing, so he's able to do a presentation. Supposed to be, but he's still recovering.
We're going to get started here in about 90 seconds. So if you could begin considering or thinking about taking a seat, any seat.
It is about showtime.
Welcome everyone to the Iowa Disability Votes Count Town Hall on disability and the political process. We're glad that you were able to make your way here, and we hope to have a robust conversation about the state's largest minority group mobilizing us to get out to vote and participate in the political process. And we will go ahead and get started. My name is Rima McCoy McDee. I'm the Executive Director of Central Iowa Center for Independent Living. And to my right, we have Mark Lehman with Disability Rights Iowa. And then to Mark's right, we have Kathleen O'Leary, who is a very important member of Polk County, the state of Iowa, and just an all-around awesome lady. And so we're gathered here today with a very simple objective: to mobilize Iowa's largest minority group, that is people with disabilities, to vote, to participate in the political sphere of our state. We are the largest minority group in not only the state, but in the country and on the planet, and historically are a largely underrepresented voting bloc. Our goal at Iowa Disability Votes Count is to change that paradigm so that in 2020, 2024, and elections that follow, the disability vote is as striven after as the women's vote or the black vote or the LGBT vote or any of the other minority votes that have weight and importance in the United States. So we're going to cover a lot of ground today. We're going to talk caucus accessibility. We're going to talk voters' rights. We're going to talk about the importance of participating in the primary, and we're going to talk about the different ways of voting, because many people with disabilities simply don't participate in the political process because they feel they have misinformation, or they feel like because of the barriers that they experience that those are insurmountable at the polling place. And so we want to clear up some misconceptions about the different ways of voting. And we also want to meet the candidates that are in the room, and we will do that towards the end of our presentation. We've got several folks who are running for legislative office, both at the state and federal level, and would love to give them an opportunity to introduce themselves to us. And so, but before we dive into everything, I thought that it would be good for us to begin our conversation with talking about dissatisfaction with our legislative wings, both at the state and the federal level. Because we are at a place where satisfaction with our elected officials is at an all-time low. And so I pulled some articles off the internet for us to just look at. Got a nice picture of one of our leaders here. And here's a graph that NBC put together that shows voters' feelings about the job that Congress is doing. As of 2014, looks like 20% of people approve of the job that our federal legislative wing is doing. And here's another graph that falls in alignment with that information. And it's not just the federal level. Iowa lawmakers came, saw, and did little. And so the question begs, are we in crisis as far as our legislative wings are concerned? And what we have here is a pie chart with feedback from people who choose to not vote. And I want us to focus on the purple piece here. 14.9% of people polled said that they choose to not vote because of illness or disability. The lime green piece here, 2.6% of people say that they choose to vote because they don't have transportation. Small number of people forgot to vote. We've got the lavender, 11.3% of people don't specify a reason, but there's a lot of reasons why people are choosing to not vote, not just disability, but perhaps lack of engagement. But Iowa Disability Votes Count wonders if perhaps we're presented with an opportunity. What if our legislative wings are in crisis because simply not enough people are voting? And what if we were to mobilize people who historically have been overlooked to vote, to actively participate? Perhaps that would increase the likelihood that people who are elected are better able to represent the increasingly diverse face of the United States. And so that's why we're here. That's why we're talking about mobilizing the votes of people with disabilities. And as I mentioned, people with disabilities are the largest minority group in the world. And I want to share a video with everyone.
Earn the Vote is a nonpartisan campaign to engage both voters with disabilities and politicians about disability issues in the United States.
It came about because a lot of us with disabilities election passed before our eyes and no one was mentioning us, even in relation to issues that had a major impact on our lives.
A few of them do a bit more on the road already, and some people don't even do that. We're hoping to get them to be more specific and take real stance on actual votable issues.
As a group, people with disabilities are exactly interpreting money and power, and those are key ingredients to getting attention from candidates.
So I think if they really want to win over all of America, they need to address all of America.
Other campaigns in the past have engaged the disability community. If you look at the Obama campaign in 2008, if you look at the Bush campaign in 1980, these were campaigns that actively sought out the disability community and actively tried to engage them. And if you look, they both won.
The majority of people with disabilities are having visible disabilities. There are people with mental illness, people with learning disabilities.
People with sort of medical eyes, and we forget that there's people behind these and that there's wants and needs.
I'd like to see more initiatives focusing on complete integration and inclusion of disabled people in the community, and I think that this election is a really great place to start.
So to me, being a disabled person is a political identity. It's more than just my diagnosis and what I can't do.
So, many people think that if a block of voters don't have a lot of money, there's not much point in focusing on them. But for especially the state legislative positions, we learn time and time again that every vote counts. We've got some districts where a person could win by as few as 17 votes. And so it's a wise candidate for office that reaches out to every eligible voter, and that includes people with disabilities. And so a hot topic of conversation in the state of Iowa is always the caucuses, and so we want to begin with talking about caucus accessibility. And we've got Disability Rights Iowa subject matter expert here, and who's going to take the lead with that portion of the conversation. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Rena. If I get too loud here, you know. My name is Mark Lehman from Disability Rights Iowa. And in case you don't know what Disability Rights Iowa is, we are a federally funded nonprofit law center that advocates for and protects the rights of individuals with disabilities and or mental illness in the state of Iowa. So if you have an issue possibly with or work accommodation or a job accommodation or a school accommodation that you need some help with, we'd be the ones to talk to, and we'd be the ones who probably would end up helping you. Now, the best thing about that is that if we accept that case, if we accept your case, it's all free. All your legal help is free. All right, let me get into the caucuses real quick here. Before the caucuses started, we met with both the parties, Republican and Democratic state parties, to talk to them about accessibility issues for the caucus sites. And while they both seemed receptive, it was probably a little bit in the game to change too many caucus sites. Obviously, we want as many caucus sites as possible to be accessible to everyone, no matter what, you know, if you're in a wheelchair or however you're coming into that caucus site, it needs to be accessible to the point where you can understand the speakers, you can get in there so there's plenty of room for, say, a wheelchair to turn around, and so forth. So our goal is by 2020 to have every caucus site accessible for every Iowan. So Now, we've got a little survey that we put out after the caucuses and talk to people, and it doesn't matter whether you're disabled or not. We want your feedback, because the only way we're going to change things is to get your feedback and know what's wrong out there so we can address those issues. So I want to start off with, if you're going to a caucus, first off, path of travel. Does the site have a path of travel from the parking lot to the entrance and secure barriers? Is the entrance accessible to individuals who use wheelchairs or have mobility impairments? Public transportation. Is there public transportation available to provide individuals with a way to reach the site? We have a gentleman in our office that's in a wheelchair. The caucus lasted basically 2 hours. And that doesn't always work with the transportation services and their schedules and so forth. If the caucus were to go late or something like that, he would miss his bus home, and so forth. So we're trying to make it to where every caucus site is on a bus schedule or is going to be available to that individual to go there, participate in the caucus, and be able to get home in time safely. Alternative formats. Did the notice for the caucus include an offer to provide materials in alternate format, such as computer discs, large print, or audio tape for individuals who are blind or hearing impaired? We had a couple clients come to us before the caucuses, and we were able to secure cart services for at one site, and a sign language interpreter at another site. Now that was kind of a last-ditch effort and so forth, and we want to do more of that. So and we understand that it may be cost prohibitive at every caucus site in Iowa to do that. But what we want the parties to be aware of is that we have individuals out there who do want a caucus and may need this accommodation. So we want individuals that need that accommodation to get a hold of us so we can address that with the parties and see if we can help them at each site. Information for requesting for reasonable accommodations. Did the notice include an offer to provide accommodation for disability, contact information for obtaining the accommodation, and that said accommodation could be provided where reasonable? And once again, we understand the reasonable part. It can't be everywhere, but wherever we have a need, we hope we can fill that need. Auxiliary aids and services. Did the caucus provide sign language interpreters, assistive listening equipment, and other accommodations necessary so that persons who are deaf or hard of hearing may fully participate in the event? Now, we addressed a rally up at the Capitol here a couple weeks ago, 3 of us, Jane Hudson, our executive director, and myself and another advocate. And that's certainly an interesting experience when you're up there talking, you have sign language interpreters on each side of you and so forth. But that's what was necessary. And once again, we want to be able to provide those services, if possible, at any site that they're needed. Signage. Did the site have clear signage to indicate the entrance, restroom facilities, and parking areas for post volunteers in key areas to give directions? I know when I went to my caucus site that night, it was a parking lot right in front. It was a public library. We went straight into it, so it was wheelchair accessible and so forth. We didn't have anyone with a microphone even up at the front, so the building was packed, and it was hard to hear everyone talk and so forth. So they need to have, even just for people who are normal hearing, they need to have a microphone up there so everyone can hear and understand. And that's my next point, is microphones. Was a microphone or other method to amplify speech used during the caucus? Once again, it was not used in mine. Well, I wish we had that one. So, spaciousness. Was the caucus room set up with plenty of space for wheelchair access? Okay. We had our gentleman in our office who went to the caucus that night. Said that he had a hard time. He was here in Des Moines. He had a hard time with the room and so forth. And I think, Jane, you too had some room issues and so forth where your caucus site was and so forth. So, my understanding was that there were 5 remote sites that had caucuses that are out in rural areas. And obviously in a house, you're not going to expect to have a lot of wheelchair access unless it's specially designed for that in the first place. So, and that's why we need to move those caucus sites into areas where there's going to be a building that's going to have all these issues taken care of and resolved. So, respectful language. Was respectful language used in party communications when referring to people with disabilities, avoiding antiquated terms such as wheelchair-bound and stereotyping references to people with psychiatric, intellectual, and other disabilities? I know at my caucus site we didn't have any issues with disabilities as far as that goes, but that's certainly an issue that if there's some education that needs to be done, perhaps for the officials in each party and the people that are running the caucus sites, we're certainly here to help with that. So, now, did you see any issues other than the aforementioned that in any way would affect any individual from fully participating in this caucus? So that's just the last one we threw in there. If anything else came up, an individual went there to the caucus site and wasn't satisfied with the way it went and how it proceeded that night, so just let us know, give us some suggestions and so forth. So
there were
there were some laughs when we discussed wheelchair accessibility at the caucuses, and I'm just wondering if there's anyone in the room that would like to share their experience, either personal experience or observed experience at a caucus. I'm going to walk over to you.
Hi, Rena. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mike. Some of you may not know me. I'm involved with the disability organization, and I'm also active on the partisan side, and I was a temporary chair last February at a local caucus for Des Moines 44. We were at Hubble Elementary School, and sir,
that was District 44.
About 20 years ago, I helped one of the major parties in our county find caucus site locations, so I know exactly what you're talking about. I do want to say, in my particular caucus, we were fortunate. We had the utmost cooperation with the school system. We had an elevator that was handicap accessible, and we had a ramp, and I believe there was an individual that was wheelchair needy or whatever. I realized when I filled out one of the disability surveys, I talked to some folks, such as Rayla, and it's okay to mention you in this. And I talked to Reba about this a little bit, and some other leaders in the disability community, and they pointed out to me, you gotta realize how everything is not the way it is for you. I was pointing out to the lady next to me, on caucus night, we had buses, thank gosh, going by our caucus site right before the caucus even started. We were lucky that way. I had the utmost cooperation with the school system in terms of getting into the building. I even had the building custodian staff help me hang up signs that we had for the doors and telling people where to go. I don't want to knock your bubble, sir, or anything like that, and I don't want to do that here, but I do have to say, as a temporary chair of the caucus, and as a disabled citizen, that was the best caucus on-the-ground experience I ever had. I mean, we had people standing in the back. We were in the cafeterias that were sitting on picnic tables. Now, honestly, if you're doing a caucus in somebody's living room in the middle of a rural county, things are a little bit different. And that's what one of the leadership people pointed out to me, is things aren't that way every area in Iowa, so we have a long way to go. But I just felt, as a personal level, I wanted to point that out, that we've made tremendous progress. We have a long way to go, but I'm grateful for the support that I had in putting on my caucus. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Your spirited feedback is always appreciated. No, thank you, thank you. Anybody else have a, yes, I'm coming over time. On your left.
I just wanted to say that at my caucus, there were likely a lot of people who had issues that we never knew about. There are a lot of people who have been disabilities that are not readily apparent, and at my caucus they definitely would have had issues with overstimulation and things like that where they just couldn't even participate because of how loud and how raucous and just, I mean, it was great energy, don't get me wrong, but it would be difficult for many people with disabilities. Also, my caucus site was not readily accessible for people in wheelchairs, although there were entrances that were accessible by standards of the ADA. The crowds made it impossible for anyone to navigate those in any sort of mobility impairment, in any type of, using any type of devices. And finally, we had a lot of votes where we were told to put our hands down when we were pointed at, which is not a visually accessible means of voting. So there were several issues that affected many disability groups, and I just wanted to point those out.
Thanks, Ty. Speaking of overstimulation, I have Asperger's syndrome, and so I was wildly overstimulated at my caucus site. I was very fortunate, though, because there was a room adjacent to where we were caucusing where I could retreat to when the need arose. So, making my way over. I'm on your right.
I'm Cindy Ray, and I went to my caucus early because I had this idea I was going to help. Well, I got there and I was in line to try to register myself in, but they didn't have me on the caucus list in my precinct, and they said, well, go try. They were 5 and 4 in Urbandale, so they said, go try 4. So I went down there and they said, well, we don't have you on our list, you're probably on 5, you just go in here, you can just vote anyway. Well, I went in there and I thought, you know what, I really can't. And they're just trying to figure out a way to do away with me not worry about me. So I went back, I said, you folks need to fill out forms. I need to fill out to be registered here. And they weren't really big on it, but they finally did. And then I was sitting at one of those little kids' tables in the cafeteria, which really hard to get out off of those. and somebody was having people sign petitions, and I kept trying to get the guy's attention to say I would be willing to sign for somebody. And so at the end of all that, they just decided to have to take votes for, well, I was pretty disgruntled, really, but then they were taking votes for delegates, and but most of the people had left, so somebody said who'd be willing to be a delegate for, Hillary. And I said, sure, I'll do it. And so I did that and have been going to the conventions, but it was really a rather unsatisfying experience.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Janae Bergmeyer. I was also, first of all, so I'm really glad that you had a good experience at your caucus. I think the good experiences we have tend to get under-recognized at these kind of events. So really glad that there are some people that had a good experience there. At my caucus, as far as wheelchairs, the first thing I was concerned about was the fire code. Because we had 600 people in an auditorium, and if there was some emergency that happened, I was kind of concerned about those people in wheelchairs being able to get out safely. We ended up going outside, which was better, but I'm sure it was very cold, and I'm sure there are other people, just elderly people or other people that may not be able to be out in the cold that were having to deal with those conditions as well. I am also somebody that is blind, so we had at our caucus, of course, as Cindy was saying, forms to fill out. They made everybody re-register, which was a little bit concerning because I thought I was prepared as somebody with a disability. Part of that is my responsibility to prepare, and the reality is, as someone with a disability, I might have to do a little bit more homework than somebody else in the public, and I thought I had done that with going to the area first and being able to get some of that stuff in beforehand. So those were kind of my experiences.
Thank you very much. Jane?
I'm Jane Hudson, Director of Disability Rights Iowa, but I want to talk about my personal experience at Monroe Elementary. It was very, very crowded. People were having to go into the street with cars and buses to get to the ends of the lines. I thought that was especially dangerous for people with disabilities and children and families. Second, for the registration process, it was only paper registration, even though Iowa now has a way to register online for someone who's visually impaired or blind. I don't think they can fill out the paper registration on their own. Third, no microphones. And fourth, we were in a gymnasium with no chairs, standing for hours and hours. And any person with a disability who can't stand for that long, some people even have to leave.
Thank you, Jane. Anybody else?
I was the first time precinct chair and never been to caucus before. And our location, the physical location, couldn't have been better unless it was about 3 times bigger than it was. And as someone who has some insight into disability, I kind of knew what might need to be done to create accessibility, other than accessibility. And I really, there was an older gentleman there who was not only on a walker, but he was also blind. And I didn't have a template or any way to help him sign any documents. And then it became so crowded that I frankly lost him in the crowd. It was actually pretty frightening. However, as the room did start to develop, I looked around and tried to pair people who had mobility impairments with people who could perhaps assist them and try to help that way. But I can't imagine someone who didn't know about accommodations trying to handle that with as little training as I was given.
Thank you. All right.
Yes, I'm Seth Anderson with the Culver Public Policy Center in Simpson. We're doing a campus voting project with support from Disability Rights Iowa. I have a question though. I am aware of the fact that the Iowa Democratic Party has a committee that's looking at caucus reforms. And I apologize if I missed this, if you mentioned it already, Mark, but is there representation from the disability rights community on that Democratic Party committee?
Lady standing right next to you.
No. I am a recent addition to the Iowa Democratic Caucus Review Committee, and will be hyper-focused on accessibility issues that impact not only the community of people with disabilities, but everybody. Because an accessible caucus site is a happy caucus site for everybody.
And is anyone aware the Republican Party of Iowa undertaking any kind of similar effort right now?
Disability Rights Iowa has been talking to both parties. The Republicans are very open to talking about accessibility issues, and what we plan on doing is having focus groups of people with different types of disabilities and gather information first about what barriers they're facing, and then send representatives and us to meet with the Republican Party as well as the Democratic Party.
I think I saw one more hand, but that may have been a fabrication in my mind.
I think they're pointing out stuff.
Okay. But you can't talk about accessibility without talking about voters' rights, because accessibility is a voter's right. So we're going to switch gears and talk about what your rights are as a voter.
Okay, I'm sure we could talk about the caucus all night, good and bad. But let's move on. We'll go on to voting rights, and we've taken some things off of the Secretary of State's website and a few other websites to kind of look at some possible situations that you may have if you go out and vote and perhaps get challenged by your vote and so forth, or if you want to register on election day. Start off, if your name is on the list of registered voters, you have the right to vote without providing proof of your identity or residence, which makes sense, of course. If you're registered and you're on that list, I can't imagine you're on there incorrectly. So, you have the right to register on election day at a polling place. If you can show proof of residency in the election district, or if another qualified elector who resides in your municipality will verify or corroborate their eligibility. And I've got another if you did register but your name is not on the registration list, you have the right to vote at your district's polling location after 1, signing the registration form, and 2, providing written proof of your residence or having another lawyer confirm your residence. So that issue could pop up. If you cannot read, if you have difficulty understanding English, or if you are blind or otherwise physically disabled, you have the right to receive help when voting from anyone except your employer, agent of your employer, or an officer or agent of your union. Yes?
Back in the other one, how do you provide proof of your residence? It says provide written proof of your residence.
Well, it could be several things. It could be independent. Your driver's license, it could be a state-issued ID, it might be a utility bill from your home and so forth. Things like that. I believe there's a list of about 6 or 7 items that qualify.
Can we talk a bit about having other voters?
Yeah, actually,
Are we going to talk?
yeah, I'm going to get that here a little bit. Let's get back to this one real quick. Once again, you have the right to receive help when voting from anyone except your employer, agent of your employer, or an officer or agent of your union. So remember those items. All polling places must be physically accessible to you. However, state statutes still allow the option to vote curbside. If you are unable to enter a polling place as a result of a disability, you must be allowed to vote outside the polling place. 2 election officials must take a ballot out to you. After you mark the ballot, it will be taken back into the polling place. Well, we've talked to some people that knew about the curbside voting, but had never done it before, some poll workers and so forth. So if that's an issue for you, make sure that you call ahead and have them aware that you're going to need curbside voting. Okay, if you do not provide the clerk with proper identification when registering to vote by mail, and if you go to the polls without proper identification, you have the right to vote by provisional ballot. So don't let anybody tell you you can't vote. You're always going to be able to have that provisional ballot. You may bring an unofficial sample ballot in your polling place. No problem with that. You may request a paper ballot if you cannot use the voting machine due to your physical disability. Now, I've done some little bit of research on that and talked to Rick Shannon from the DD Council. There's 13 counties in Iowa that use the AutoMark machine, and there's another machine, I think, by VO1, which is used in somewhere around 50 to 60 counties, so forth. And if you're not familiar with that, once you get in there, don't get frustrated. Just tell a polling official that you need a paper ballot and you need help. And that's the next issue we're going to deal with. If you mistake or spoil your ballot, you have the right to request a replacement ballot from the election officials. And I believe you can receive up to 3 ballots. If a voter is experiencing difficulty in marking the ballot, the voter may request assistance from any individual who is not, once again, not his or her employer, an agent of the employer, or an officer or agent of his or her union. And I think on the handout that I did on this next issue, I think we had 100 feet, but it's actually 300 feet. When you are within 300 feet of the entrance to a building containing a polling place, you have the right to wait in line to vote without a political candidate or anyone from a political party or group supporting a referendum trying to influence your vote. Okay? If you're standing outside that building waiting to get in the vote, just brush them off. If they come up to you, try talking to you, or try to sway your vote in any way up to 300 feet from the entrance to that building, that polling place. So, okay, this is what we're talking about. If you are eligible to vote in a ward or district, but do not have documented proof of your residence, you can have someone who is eligible to vote in your municipality corroborate your residency. The corroborator does not need to be a registered voter. They must provide proof that they reside in the same city or municipality as you, and must sign a statement that says you live at the address in question. Now, both of you are going to need to sign a statement swearing the truth of what you're swearing to, and so forth. And if it comes out that that individual was doing it illegally, you weren't a registered or weren't the correct voter, then it is a felony. So just to remember that. Any questions?
You're right. On your right.
My question is, does the person that's signing for you need to be 18 or older, or can it literally be anyone?
I'm not positive about that, but I would assume it would be 18 or older.
They have to be an eligible elector, which means they have to be 18 or older in order to be an eligible elector.
Thank you. Any other questions? Just out of curiosity, who here had heard of curbside voting? Raise your hand if you've heard of curbside voting. Okay. So that's something that's new to the majority of us. Any questions about curbside voting? Because I think that could be a very powerful tool for some individuals. Okay.
It's great that an individual from the Secretary of State's office is here. And could you just explain what curbside voting is?
Thank you. I'm Carol Olson. I'm Deputy Secretary of State for Elections. And so curbside voting is anybody, they can get into the parking lot, and so they can remain in their own vehicle, and they need to have a way to send a notice into the polling site, and 2 poll workers will go out to your vehicle and to provide you assistance with voting. And it will be 2 people who represent 2 different political parties, so that they will provide that checks and balances process. They will help you mark the ballot if that is desired. And if you don't need help marking the ballot, then you can mark the ballot with your own, in privacy in your own vehicle if you wish. And then that ballot will be returned to the polling place and will be inserted into the voting machine and voted like every other ballot.
Thank you, Carol. Yes, sir.
Yes, and thanks for that. But a follow-up. In a heavy election, we're going to have a really difficult time with poll workers' accessibility to go out to curb, as you're well aware. Would you please respond as to what is recommended in those cases?
That's a good point. And so the poll workers will do the best they can. I think it was mentioned that if you can provide prior notice to the polling site that you'll be arriving, that will be helpful. If you have some flexibility as to what time you might be able to arrive at the polls, it would be to your own benefit to try to arrive at a time that would be less congested. Noon hour, between 4 and 6 tend to be the time periods which tend to be the most heavy at the polling place. You can call the county auditor's office and ask them if they have information. The county auditor's office will have ready information about what's going on at their respective polling sites, and so they should know if there is a long line so that you can try to get that information before you show up. And on a presidential election, we want all voters to try to be patient because that affects all voters, but the county auditors are completely committed to trying to get all of the voters processed as quickly and as fairly as it will be fair, but as quickly as they can.
Would you follow up on early voting at the election office? Perhaps how many days in advance is that?
The question was about early voting. In Iowa, we have a very wide open We call it an absentee ballot, but you don't have to be absent in order to vote. Any voter can vote by mail or vote in person at the auditor's office anytime in the 40 days prior to the election, prior to the general election. And so you can go to...
Not quite. Isn't there a cutoff?
It's 40 days. You can vote in the auditor's office up to 40 days before the election, including the day before the election.
Oh, up, including the day before?
Including the day before the election.
Very good.
And the auditor's office is also open on the Saturday before the election. And some auditor's office will choose to be open on other days. There's another opportunity that voters have, and that voters can petition to have a satellite voting station at a location of their choice. And so if there is a location that will meet your purposes, you can petition the county auditor's office to have that satellite voting station, and that can happen anytime in that 40-day window prior to the general or the primary election. The auditors do have the choice to determine when that satellite voting station will be open, but in every case, they're going to work with you so that that satellite voting station would be open at a time that would make sense for those voters.
Do you have a minimum number of voters for that site, that satellite site?
No. It needs to meet all the qualifications of a polling place, so it needs to be accessible to voters. It needs to have a private place. It needs to be able to accommodate a private place for people to cast their ballot.
Thank you, Carol. Yes? Yes?
I was actually hospitalized one time during an election, and I was appalled because I'd never missed an election, so they actually brought me a ballot to the hospital. I would not recommend that, by the way. However, they were very accommodating, but it really made me think about voting early as a, precaution for anybody. I was perfectly healthy the day before I was in the hospital, so it was kind of crazy.
Thank you, Claire. We are already diving into a conversation about all the different ways that a person can vote. I'm so glad that Carol's here with Secretary of State because this is your bailiwick, so to speak. And so we're going to kind of recover a lot of the things that Carol spoke about. And talk about the different ways of voting in the state. And so obviously voting in person is an option on election day, and all polling stations are open from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. If you need to find your polling site, you just check in with your county auditor. And speaking of your county auditor, you can vote early at your county auditor's office. You can do that via an absentee ballot. And I believe that April 28th was is that correct, Carol, was the day that we...
That sounds right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so since April 28th, we've been able to vote, participate in the primary election in the state. You're still able to do so if you check in with your county auditor and wish to participate in voting by an absentee ballot instead of going to your polling station on election day. And Carol gave a very great synopsis of voting via a satellite station, and so I'm not going to improve upon what she already said about that particular option. And you can also vote by mail, and this is another opportunity to check in with your county auditor and vote by absentee ballot. So you get your ballot, you mark it, and you mail it in. This is a wonderful way of voting for individuals whom have transportation issues or other barriers to actually getting to a polling place. And we already talked about curbside voting, but I think it's such a wonderful resource that we can't talk about it too much. Curbside voting is a great way to participate in the process if you are able to get yourself to the curb and are either unable or would prefer not to actually go into your polling place. And so all the guidance that Carol gave about calling your polling place prior to arriving, going to your polling place during off hours to increase the likelihood of you not having to wait any longer than you would need to in order to vote. Yes, Jane?
How do you call a polling place? Or do you call the auditor?
The auditor? Yeah, so if you need to call your polling place, you just get in contact with your county auditor. And important point of clarification or consideration. You can have someone help you fill out your ballot as long as they are not your employer or an agent of your employer. Is that the case, Carol? Yeah. Or an officer or an agent of your union. And Carol, just in case anyone has questions about, well, what the heck is an agent of the union, I'm going to come back and get your take on that.
It would be a union steward, it would be a union officer, so that would be a collective bargaining unit for the place where you work. And so somebody who is representing that collective bargaining union.
Thank you. I actually, the first time I came across that verbiage, I thought agent of your union meant your spouse, so. Whatever. I'm sure it's completely unheard of a spouse trying to coerce their partner to vote a particular way. And so now let's talk about the primary. The primary is less than 2 weeks away, and historically, voters tend to focus on the presidential election and kind of let the other opportunities to vote kind of fall by the wayside. And in many ways, participating in the primary election can be even more powerful. And so we've got Kathleen O'Leary who's going to walk us through some of the important points of consideration as far as why participate in the primary. And I apologize, we're kind of shuffling over here because we're dealing with an extremely short cord for our computer. And so, yeah, apologize for that.
So basically, we're focusing on three big reasons why the primary is important. And platform building is a crucial part of the primary. We're not just talking about, well, let's pick a Democrat or let's pick a Republican. We have a pool of Democrats and a pool of Republicans and a pool of individuals from other parties who are building platforms, and depending on how much momentum they get, even if they don't win, their platform can and does shape the platforms of the individuals who do win the primaries. And so, and along with that comes public participation, the other important piece of the primary. And then the third piece is simply an opportunity to get to know candidates at a personal level. That happens during primary season much more so than during the general election. And so we've got an opportunity to get to know a few candidates here who have been generous enough to stop by and sit with us during our town hall. And I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you are a candidate for office and would like to take a minute or two to introduce yourself to the audience and give those of us who might have questions an opportunity to ask them, we'd love it if you just come up to the front and share with us.
Good afternoon. My name is Claire Selsey. I'm running in House District 42, which is most of the city of West Des Moines, and it includes a tiny little part of Warren County called Cumming, Iowa. You might remember that's Tom Harkin's hometown. Yay. So I got into this election because of the education funding deficit that our state is currently experiencing. I was all set to run for West Des Moines City Council when I read about the veto, and I said something's got to change. So that's why I decided to do something about it. It took about 2 weeks for me to realize that no one else was going to run, so I did it myself. There are a really great group of candidates this year, and I'm finding it's a very, in many ways, lonely journey, something that you embark on that's very challenging and really tests everything that you have within yourself to do, so it's extremely difficult. So I would encourage you, when you see a candidate, be nice to them. They're having it's a tough journey. So, that being said, some of the reasons that I'm running are some of the same reasons we're talking about today. Accessibility to voting, to me, is an extremely important right that we've all been bestowed, and we should make it as easy as possible to get as many people to vote as we can. We should not be putting up barriers to that. So I am fully supportive of what you're doing here, and I applaud you, all of you, for being here to talk about this important issue. My website is just claire4iowa.com. Please, there's plenty of contact information, and I'm on Facebook and Twitter too, so please, I encourage you to get in touch with me. I would be happy to come and talk to your group. I would be happy to meet voters, whatever you need me to do. So it's Claire Selsey, House District 42 in West Des Moines. Thank you so much.
Thank you. My name is Andrea Phillips, and I'm running in House District 37, which is the northern part of Ankeny. And it wasn't part of my master plan either. What happened to me was when my daughter was in school full-time last year, I thought the way that I could have the biggest impact is by getting involved in the Iowa caucus system and presidential campaigns. So I did that for a year, and my kids helped me. My daughter made signs, she even knocked on doors with me, and it was all leading up to the caucuses. And all the way through that year, I kept saying at every planning meeting that we had with the party, I said, I want to raise my hand for 3 things that I want to get on the record. 1, I want to make sure that all of our caucus sites are ADA accessible. 2, I want to make sure that we either have childcare available, like a kiddie corner if we can, or just at least make sure when we're calling people to confirm that if they need childcare, let us know and see if we can figure out a way to help them. And 3, after the caucus is over and all that busyness and work is done, I'm happy to help the local candidate for House in my district by knocking on doors for them, making phone calls for them. So caucus came and went, and after that I got an email from a friend of mine who was also working on the campaign to say, okay, it's time to talk about your local House race. And I said, okay, you don't even need to ask, I'm there, I'll help. Well, it turns out there wasn't a candidate running. And so the kind of help she was asking for was for me to be the candidate. And I've always been a political geek, so I was in for it. And in fact, my husband, when I read him the email, he didn't laugh or think it was a crazy idea. And his response was, oh, you're going to be gone so many nights. And that's true, and it is hard. So being nice to your local candidate would be greatly appreciated. And also, I do encourage you to find out who your local candidate is and contact their campaign and let them know that you'd like to be involved, whether that's just sharing your concerns from a perspective of a person with disabilities or a family member as an advocate, or in helping out with their campaign, because that's the way those issues get taken forward, and that's the way that we can make a difference. I will say briefly, I have a son who's 11 years old who was born at 32 weeks, and he has mild cerebral palsy. And so he walks independently, but he does wear AFOs, and he has balance challenges, and he can't run and jump like the other kids. And like, for example, this week was, Tuesday I think, was their track meet day. And all the kids from all the elementaries got to go and have a full day of sporting and racing activities, which is not quite up his alley. But the schools have been amazing in helping, especially the ADA. And as I'm sure you know, as Claire mentioned, that's at risk. It's something that's at risk. When we originally relocated our family to Iowa in 2009, we did so because we'd been living overseas and we wanted to give our kids an all-American childhood. All-American childhood with, blue skies and clean water, and you can see that's also at risk. But since moving here, or when we were telling people that we were considering moving here, everybody said Iowa was known for its quality education. And I would say over the past few years, the legislature hasn't been stepping up, and funding has been falling, and AEA was one of the things that got cut this year. They're facing some big cuts this year. And they're the ones, if you're not aware, who help students with disabilities or special needs integrate into the school system. So I encourage you again to contact your local legislature or legislative candidate, or you can contact me as well, or Claire. My name is Andrea Phillips, and I'm House District 37, Northern Ankeny. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Mike Scherzan, running for Congress in the 3rd District, and we have a primary coming up June 7th. I particularly want to thank the Central Iowa Center for Independent Living and, of course, the Disability Rights Iowa for putting this on. And Kathleen, I know you're more familiar with my political director, Julian Clampy, but we run into you in more political meetings, and you actually should be on the ballot because you're as many meetings as I am. But I want to thank you for attending this, and I just want to introduce myself and give you a little bit of my background, but also tell you that it's been informative for me today. I definitely wanted to attend this and wanted to understand some of the issues that you're facing. I had a plaque in my office. So I have as many of you may know, I have a bit of a business background, but I grew up over on the east side of Des Moines. And I went to Dowling High School here. I graduated in 1970, then went on to the University of Iowa and graduated in 73. 26 years later, I received my master's degree, but I was fortunate enough to grow up in a family that valued people and valued individual rights over not valuing those things. And the interesting thing about what we're talking about here, voting, I happen to be a bit of a history buff. People in my family are that way. As a matter of fact, my brother, who is here, has a master's degree in history. And voting itself is an interesting history in the United States. You have a right to vote, and that's what this is about. You have the right to access vote. But that wasn't always the case in the United States. You have to, I don't know if you know, it wasn't really mentioned in the Constitution originally. The first people that had a right to vote, you had to own property, and you had to be white. We have evolved ever since that right to provide citizens more and more rights. And those rights are yours. And all I have to tell you, I could go on and on about what I believe in, what I have passion about. A lot of my advertisements are about what I've done in business, the people I've tried to help. I believe in employee ownership. I believe women should be paid equally. But a big part of what I believe in personally is that your rights have to be upheld. And you have to have people that will defend those rights. And I intend to win this election. And I do intend to beat Mr. Young in the next election. And I will just commit to you publicly, and I will continue to commit to you that you'll have a friend in protecting your rights. And I expect and I request that you communicate with me once I'm in office to continue to defend those rights, because if you're not diligent, and if I'm not diligent in that, those rights will be chipped away. And I fully understand what's going on, at least from the parts that I've read in the school system. If your rights aren't protected and protected by legislators and party leaders and elected leaders, they won't be there. It'll take those types of individuals that believe that someone has to stand up for them. I have to prove myself that I need to earn your trust. But I will tell you, I understand, at least from the readings that I've done, that I have a lot to learn. But I also understand that the rights that you hold dear to yourself right now, the ability to write, to vote. And I learned something today about curbside voting that I'd never known before. So it's a learning process for me. I just request that you keep in touch with me, communicate with me, and I ask for your vote on June 7th. But it's an honor to be with you, and I appreciate the opportunity that's afforded me in this manner. Thank you.
My name is Eric South. I'm running for House District 40, which covers most of Urbandale, a little bit of Waukee, and a little bit of Johnston. I'm running because I'm tired of waiting for politicians to say what I believe, and I decided that I would put my message out and see who agreed with me. This gathering has a special importance to me because I have a son that is what is considered special needs. And I have seen the shortcomings of the education system when it comes to getting him what he needs to succeed in life, in a job, as a man, as a husband, and potentially a father. And he is my future. He is why I'm doing this. And for your children and grandchildren as well. So I thank you. It's been very educational. It's been very enlightening. And I hope you remember me on June 7th. Thank you.
I'm the last, I guess, what's that, the caboose? Forgive me. My name is Desmond Adams. That doesn't sound very powerful. My voice is gone. I'm fighting temperature, and I'm also not feeling very well. But I am running. I am Mike Scherzan's opponent, running for United States Congress, District 3, looking to represent your interest here in Polk County, Dallas County, Warren County, Adams, Cass, Dallas, Guthrie, Fremont, Madison Mills, Montgomery, Page, Potawatomi, Polk, Ringgold, Taylor, Union, and Warren. So if you know anyone that lives in one of these 16 counties, let them know that you had the opportunity to hopefully listen to Desmond Adams. I'm running as a Democrat. I don't want to assume that you are a Democrat. I'm running as a Democrat, and I'll tell you the five things that are critically important to me, and that's education, economic fairness, middle-class job creation, rural repopulation, and climate action. Now, within that, it's interesting. I just received, and Rima is unaware of this, but I just received a special needs packet that came home with my child, and I saw your name in it as one of the resources, which was outstanding because I actually know you. So that's beneficial because oftentimes we don't really know necessarily the people in which are in these positions, and that's beneficial. I am running because I want to represent your interest in Washington, D.C. I want to give you a voice. I not only want to protect your right, but I want to expand upon it. I want to create opportunities and bridges. I want to help build coalitions. I want to not only unseat David Young, but I want a different vision for our 3rd Congressional District. I want a different vision for our state. I see that there's an opportunity that we can achieve some things that we've never even thought of before. Yes, it's low-hanging fruit. I'm the first African-American male ever running for Congress in the state of Iowa's history. That's low-hanging fruit. I graduated from Drake University, both in undergrad as a licensed educator and also from the law school. That's low-hanging fruit. But what's not low-hanging fruit is an elected official that really cares about you and your interests. That's not low-hanging. And we need that. We need political leadership, not just partisan gridlock that we have today. I want to represent you on that issue. I want to continue to represent your issues. Forgive me, I'm not going to give you a whole long speech because my voice is kind of hurt right now. But I will ask that if you have questions, you can give me a call or visit my website at DesmondAdams.com. Desmond is spelled with a U, not an O. Tomorrow night at 6:30, you'll have an opportunity on KCCI on Channel 8 to see Mike, myself, and our other opponent who did not visit with us tonight. I guess he's not here. I don't see him. And you can actually hear about what's important to us and what's important to you, hopefully. I look forward to chatting with you soon. Thank you for your time. God bless you.
State Senator Rob Hogerson, I don't know if he's left.
Thank you so much to all the candidates who attended this evening. I'd like to present the rest of us in the audience who might have questions, either for the candidates or for any of us here, with an opportunity to ask those questions. And so, if you have one, let it be known. I'll bring the microphone to you. All right?
Thank you. I have kind of 3 public service announcements, if that's okay, representing the Secretary of State's office. And first of all, for all of you who are running for office, and those of you who are advocates for voting, which is everyone here, to please ask people if they are registered to vote. And most people will say yes, but also ask them, please, are you registered where you currently live? Because you can update that voter registration through the online process. And so to have your address updated where you currently live, and that will make sure you get to the right polling site on election day, and will also avoid any lines so you don't have to do that change of address at the poll on election day. So are you registered where you currently live? Number 2, absentee voting is a very commonly used practice in Iowa, and that is great. Please request and submit and mail your absentee ballot early. The post office has extended its guidelines for delivery standards, where it used to be that you could drop something in the mail and the following day expect that it would be received in lucky, but you really can't count on it. Your absentee ballot has to be postmarked by the Monday before the election in order for, or received on election day. But ballots are not postmarked reliably. And so even though you put your ballot in the mail plenty early, if it doesn't have that postmark on it, and it is received after election day, it will not be counted. So please request and submit and vote your absentee ballots early. Number 3 PSA is that we all get excited about elections for the general election, particularly in the presidential year. In Iowa, between 70 and 80% of our voters turn out for the presidential election year. It's about 55 or 60% in the gubernatorial year. It's about 4% for the school election. Many of you have talked about Education Day. Only 4% on average statewide people turn out to vote for the school elections. It's about 14% for the city election. So your vote your vote counts at every election, but the magnitude of that impact of your vote in the school and city elections is even more strong. So please advocate for voter participation in the city and school elections as well as for the primary and general elections. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Carol. Yes.
I've often heard people ask what to do if they receive an absentee ballot in the mail and then don't fill it out. Isn't it true that you can bring that to the polling place with you and then vote there?
Yes, absolutely. You can take, and then you can, if you just surrender your absentee ballot, you can then vote at the polling place in the regular way. If you can't find your absentee ballot, or perhaps it didn't arrive, then you will be asked to complete a provisional ballot, and that means that after the election office can verify that your other ballot isn't actually already voted, then they will count your provisional ballot. So do not let that be a deterrent from going to the polling place. Good question, thank you.
My question for you, Carol, is we're doing these town halls in Sioux City and Cedar Rapids. Do you want to come with us? I'm just kidding.
I apologize if this has been asked while I was out of the room. Can someone get a sample ballot that they look at and know what's on their particular ballot, so that if they go in for early vote or vote on the day of the election, they've essentially marked a ballot and they can use that as a guide, which is what we're new to the state. We've not voted in Iowa before, which is one reason we came tonight. And where we came from, we would get like a sample ballot, either off the Secretary of State website. Sometimes it was in the newspaper, and that way Joel could mark his ballot before going, and then be able to, be easier and quicker to vote actually take place.
Yes, the sample ballot will be published in the newspaper. Now, in Polk County, there will be many, many different ballots, because we probably have, 20 or 30 different state legislators in Polk County. So there'll be many sample ballots in Polk County, but they will publish one that will be representative for Polk County. You can also get a sample ballot off of the auditor's website.
That would be just for us where we are.
Because you will need to indicate where you live, and so based on where you live, they will provide you that sample ballot.
Your county auditor's website is your friend, basically.
Carol, I understand that. For Polk, no, not as a question, as a information. In Polk County, do you live in Polk County? Okay, you can go to the elections office website, and you can access a sample ballot for your precinct. Okay?
Sir, any other questions? Yes.
I'd like to share a piece of information about guardianships and the right to vote. If a person is under a guardianship, under a court order that in a way, there has to be a separate order from the court saying this person no longer has the right to vote. And some people just think if a person comes into a polling place and from another guardianship, they can't vote. That's not true. It has to be a separate court order.
Thank you.
I just had kind of a personal thought and turned this around my mind for the last 10 years, and I talked to my individual family about this. With the changes in society going, do we see a day coming up in the future where people will be able to vote at home by computer? I mean, we go to Amazon.com and buy soap and pretzels. Does anybody have any feelings where we are 5 or 10 years away from that? Thank you.
You're not the only one that has that question in their minds, Mike, certainly.
Actually, that does take place in the state of Washington. People vote at home, they get their ballots in the mail, they send them in, they do not go to a polling place unless they're doing an actual caucus. So that's how they do it there. So that's already available in the state of Washington.
Thank you, Rand. And I have, some of you know me, some of you don't. My name is Max Nauer, and I'm active with the Polk County Democratic Party membership chair. I also have a son who's 35, who has voted in every election since he became eligible to vote. And as a conscientious parent, what I try to do is introduce him, give him an opportunity to meet as many of the candidates who will be on the ballot as possible. And then before we vote, and we almost always vote at the election office a week or two, tomorrow is when we're going to be voting there. In advance, I then pull down these days a sample ballot for our precinct. And then I discuss each office and I discuss each candidate with them in advance, the night before, which is what we'll be doing today, or tonight when I get home. And let him make those choices as he sees fit with appropriate information. So filling out that ballot, when we do so with the election office, takes a long time. But he does that faithfully, and he does it with a great deal of pride because he knows this is important.
No, thank you. Anybody else? Well, I want to end with a point of consideration. Another way to participate in the political process is to run for office. And this isn't me being a Pollyanna, but the process can begin as simply as Googling how to run for political office. I think that a powerful thing for individuals with disabilities to consider thinking about is running for office. If you are a person that feels like your needs and desires are perpetually not being represented by elected officials. Elected officials are people just like you and me. We all put our pants on one leg at a time, so to speak. And so if person A can run for office, there's no reason why you, person B, can't run for office either. And an example of that is what's going on in Illinois right now. Illinois Senate seat is, we've got two individuals who are running for that seat, and both have disabilities. Tammy Duckworth is someone who you may know. She's a vet who encountered combat-related disability. And her opponent, who is a Republican, Mark Kirk, experienced a stroke and now uses a wheelchair predominantly for his day-to-day activities. Both of these individuals have disabilities, and they are both running for the same seat. And so this is an unprecedented occurrence, but as those of us with disabilities become more and more involved in our political process, I hope to see more and more instances like this occurring in elections in the future. And so just take that with you and think about it. There's no reason why anybody who wants to be involved in the political process in this country shouldn't take it above and beyond voting and consider running for office. And if running for office feels too lofty, there are always opportunities to participate in the activities of your party. Mike, I don't want to put you on the spot, but you are a person who's very active in the GOP in this state. I don't know if you want to share with us a bit about that.
Thank you very much for letting me talk a little bit. I'm basically a citizen volunteer. I've been known to interrupt people in their dinner hours for the last 26 years here in Polk County. I'm going to write a few of the letters to the editor, but I always tell people it's not about me. It's about you, as Rima said. Everybody that's in politics has somebody making a phone call, but somebody's got to answer the phone to make a connection. Somebody's got to read your letter to the editor. Somebody's got to answer your door if you're going door to door. Believe me, these folks here that are running for office, they got more energy, more passion than I do. I just do a little bit, do what I can to help out, and I appreciate this, and thanks for all of your emails and stuff like that the last couple of days in this event. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Some consider this to be the final frontier of the civil rights movement, advocating for the complete inclusion of individuals with disabilities into our society. And so we thank you for coming out this evening. This is our very first town hall on disability in the political process. We will do this all over again on Friday in Sioux City, and then next Wednesday in Cedar Rapids. We are excited about that. We're excited that you're here. There are still refreshments in the back. If you want to get a napkin and take a bunch of Rice Krispie treats home, then go ahead, do it. If you have any questions, please reach out to me, rima@sisl.org, and please, please, please be sure to like our Facebook page. You just search for Iowa Disability Votes Count, and press like and stay up to date with all the things that are happening in our state that impact those of us with disabilities. So, thank you, and have a great evening.
That will conclude this town hall, so we'll sign off for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the streams.